as a tradie, you're expected to be stoic. You're expected to be strong, robust, macho. You're expected to be tough physically and silent in the face of adversity. Pete's funeral was in July. It was winter. The mood was bleak and somber in the packed community hall. It was a grieving community who had no answers to Pete's suicide.
Jeremy is also co-founder of the organisation Hope and Assistance for Local Tradies, or HALT, and he joins us in the studio now. Jeremy, good morning.
Good morning, Georgie, and good morning, PK. Thanks for having me along.
Yeah.
Now, as we heard you talk about there, you're talking about your good mate, Pete.
Yep.
Now, unfortunately, he was lost. Can you take us back to that moment when you did hear that horrible news?
Yes, I was actually painting a house down the end of his street where he lived, and that's when I heard the news. And it was extremely tragic. And as with a lot of suicides, we don't hear about, we don't get the answers to the questions, or the questions come too late. So it was with Pete, and it was at his wake when I was standing there, and that was the catalyst for founding HALT, was standing there. And having been a tradie for 25 years, a painter and decorator, and living and existing in that culture, and maybe ignoring the signs around and the stigma around mental health, it was at his wake when I was there talking to a heap of community members and tradies, and the conversations that we kept having were centered around two words: who's next?
Yeah.
And I thought, is that the best we can do in that blokey culture, is to say who's next?
What were the issues that Pete was dealing with that might be symptomatic of others?
I'm not sure exactly what Pete was dealing with, and I wouldn't want to delve on that, but HALT's gone across 5 states. I've spoken to thousands of tradies, farmers, sporting community, apprentices, and the two main issues, there's a myriad of issues around social determination of mental health, but it comes back to finance and relationships, and then drugs and alcohol and family. And we look at the drugs and alcohol and the relationships and the finance, and especially with tradies, is that we know tradies can earn good money. We know that. Are they equipped to actually know how to use that money? I did an event in Dramana a few weeks ago with my mate Merv Stewart, and there was 120 tradies there. And I said to them, okay guys, how many of you at TAFE learned about finance? Nothing.
Yeah.
How many of you learned about relationships? Nothing. So it's changing slowly, but we need to equip these tradies with the life experiences and the stuff around finance and relationships at a young age as an apprentice. We need to get them then.
How many tradies that you are probably directly involved with, some of your mates, suffer from this, I guess you could call it a misplaced masculinity, or this macho sense of what, you know, it's a blokey job, you've got to remain strong, don't talk about it. And how then do you break that cycle?
I'm not sure the percentages, but I reckon it'd be a very high percentage, and it's really hard to break the cycle. Education, awareness. So when HALT started in a hardware store in Castlemaine in 2013, we did an event. Now we're doing events across 5 states, but it's not just, to change that cycle, it's not just events and talking. You need to educate and raise awareness. So we need tradies, blue-collar workers. We need a whole of community approach to suicide prevention, and that involves training. So actually telling people what is anxiety, what is depression. We hear it all the time, but do we know what it is? The risk factors, how to protect themselves, things like that. So we need education and awareness and that grassroots community connection, which I believe HALT, that's where we sit.
How can you overcome the communication block, what Georgie was talking about? I've worked on building sites as well. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's a blokiness.
Yep.
And you know, the discussion just doesn't move into areas of personal mental health. Not easily anyway. What's your advice to people on work sites, or people who work alone? Tradies, a lot of tradies work by themselves as well, to get past that blokiness communication problem?
You're right, that's really tough. I think it comes back to actually doing events. So for us, it's doing an event at a hardware store and getting the tradies there. So somewhere where they feel safe, inclusive, we get them there. Or we actually go onto job sites, into mines, into sporting clubs on a Thursday night after training. They're having, you know, something to eat, getting there. So it's actually going into where people feel socially included. We need to break into that cycle. And then once again, it's continuous. We need to educate our young men, apprentices, farmers, everyone in the community, how to be good listeners. So how to hear when someone's talking, and how to have those tough conversations. And it needs to be repetitive. We need to really reinforce this into communities. And it takes time. That culture takes time.
And on the critical end, where someone might be suicidal, are the services available? and how is that system set up for blokes?
The services are there. We have the overarching services like the Lifelines and the Beyond Blue and the Headspaces. We're missing that middle tier where a lot of blokes don't really know how to access those big services.
Yeah.
So they're well funded, they're sitting there, and that's all they're needed, certainly, but we need something in between, and that's where Holt fits in, where we actually, these young men, or older men, whatever age they are, actually need to be told, explained how these services are accessed, that you can actually go to your doctor, you've got community health, you've got allied health, and actually start those conversations and then refer them to the bigger organisations, but especially Lifeline 13, 11, 14. Guys just need to know that it's okay to ring Lifeline and you can access these services and break through that stigma and that taboo around mental health.
And just one final one from me. At what point in your painting and decorating career did you realise you were a fine orator and that you should speak out in the way that you're doing, which is so admirable?
I must admit, Mum, hi Mum, got me into amateur theatre. She got me into amateur theatre.
There you go.
So my first show with the Castlemaine Theatre Company was as the Lion in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
So ever since then I've grown and you just learn to adapt. It's like being live on stage here.
Yeah.
So I did that, but also I've had this passion and energy for 5 years. We've grown Holt from nothing and now it's a community-based spread across Australia. You know, TED Talk, we've gone global. I want to access some funding, state or federal, to get Holt workers in every community that are missing. And it's just that passion, energy and drive. It's been there for 5 years and I can't see it decreasing.
Good on you. Yeah, well, I reckon you're going to get busier too.
I'd love that.
I think so too. Thank you very much, Jeremy. An amazing message, especially around this time of year too. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, if you or someone you know is experiencing distress, please do contact Lifeline 13 11 14.